Today, my guest is Shawn Kunkler with Compass in San Francisco. He is part of Homeward Associates. And let me tell you more about Shawn. So he's an East Coast native who traded Connecticut winters for California's sunny skies in his early 20s. And Shawn has cultivated a deep love for Northern California and all that his community provides. Mastering the art of customer success in his previous career, he pivoted from luxury athletic clubs into the real estate realm in 2017 and has not looked back. Serving the same discerning Bay Area clientele, Shawn has honed his keen ability to anticipate clients' individual needs and identify the right course of action to achieve success, driven by a strong desire to help others put down roots in the beloved community he calls home. His passion for real estate is palpable. It is evident in the way he thoughtfully guides clients through the home buying process, advocating every step of the way. We should mention San Francisco, not the Bay Area, rather, not the easiest market to be a realtor in, as we probably all know. So I love talking to agents that are really, doing well out there. It scares me to even think about trying something like that. He's also an accomplished martial artist and published author. He's also a motorcycle enthusiast, and he loves riding up the coast, visiting museums, and hiking Bay Area trails on the weekend. I want everybody, and he's a podcast host. I want everybody to check out his podcast. It's very similar to this one in the sense that he talks to top producers. And so we couldn't be a bigger supporter. Realtor180 is the podcast anywhere podcasts are served. You can also subscribe to the YouTube channel. Just do a search for Realtor180. You'll find him, and follow him on Instagram, Shawn_Kunkler, Kunkler. We'll have links to all this in the show notes. Shawn, welcome.
Thank you. I'm so happy to be here. This is going to be fun. Looking forward to it.
This is light lifting day for me because you are a podcast host, so no pressure, but you can, a lot of the interesting stuff is going to come from you because you're used to having interesting conversations with agents. But I always like to start, actually, before we get started, I have a question for you, and I apologize. I usually tell guests about this ahead of time. I didn't this time, so I apologize for that, but I think you'll be able to handle it, which is, what's the best piece of advice you ever received, from 2017 on about, being an agent? What was the best piece of advice you received?
Wow, that is a great question right out of the gate. What's the best piece of advice? I want to say, it's funny, my brain is going in 20 different directions, but I think the best piece of advice that I ever received was, wherever you're at in your career, let's say you're year 1 to going into year 2 or year 10 going into 11, is talk to people who are successful and ask them specifically what they did at that time frame. And because what you're doing at year 10 is very different, because your phone should be ringing by that point. And at year 1, you're trying to build your list of your hot 100. And so your daily activities are very, very different. And so I would say, surround yourself with highly successful people and then ask them what they specifically did at that specific threshold.
That's really, really great advice. I always love, it's always the fundamentals, right? And that is such a great fundamental thing that we should all be doing. And also, asking those people slightly above, like, how'd you get from here to there? And finding out what those tasks are, probably the same tasks, that you do now. And what's one bad piece of advice that you've received as an agent?
I think it's twofold. I had a really amazing principal when I was in high school, and he always said, consider the source. And so, like, if you were getting negative feedback from somebody, or like somebody was picking on you, it'd be like, consider the source. And I think when you qualify advice and then you really consider the source, the reality is you only have a couple mentors, but a lot of people, everybody's going to give you advice. And figure out what that person's really great at. And if they're not, then I probably want to take their advice.
Yeah, I think that's a very wise way. Consider the source. That's great. Wow. That is fantastic. Well, thank you again for being on our show. I would love to get to know you a bit better and find out how you got from the East Coast to the West Coast. So tell us about previously you were in the luxury athletic club business, and then, making the shift, how, why, where. Give me the specifics.
Oh God, it was almost 2 decades ago, so it was quite a while ago. I was I grew up in the burbs, and I grew up in a town that was it was a factory town. My dad owned a factory, and I grew up working in his machine shop and learning the inner workings of that, and I realized that while it's a great path, it just wasn't for me. It wasn't my DNA, and I really wanted to do more and different. Simultaneously, I was a really insecure and scared kid. And so I realized that I need to just get in front of more people to overcome that fear that I had. And I had an opportunity to do sales, and I was about, I want to say, 18 years old. And my ex worked for a motorcycle seat company, and they were hosting a huge event. And I went to the event, and it was a 3-day event, and it was basically selling seats and installing them. And we had a dinner at the close of the event. And the president stood up, and there was, the senior VPs and the VPs and the regional directors and all these people. And he's like, uh, I want to basically share what happened in the weekend and blah, blah, blah. And he like goes through and he's like, the top two salespeople, he was the number one, the president, and number two was me. And I had never done sales before, and that's where I got my taste. Simultaneously, I grew up in a small town, and I realized going to New York on weekends and hanging out in Boston that there was just something about a city,
Mhm.
and wanting to do more, wanting to figure out this different new space. I was always enthralled with martial arts. I remember as a kid, like laying on the couch. I had bad asthma, and it'd be like the weekend, and I'd watch like kung fu marathons, and I loved it. I don't know what it was about it, but I loved it. And so, as I got a little bit older and started to figure out things, I realized, one, I wanted to live in a city, and two, I really wanted to study martial arts. And going to New York and realizing they have the same weather patterns as Connecticut, I was like, you know what, I really want to go to a different hub somewhere else. And I had a pen pal growing up who lived in San Francisco, and I learned tidbits about it. And I think it was 4 months later, we moved sight unseen.
Amazing. And here you are. So what I love about what you do is obviously you're doing something I don't do, which is I am not out there in the trenches selling. So you are, which I very much admire. And on top of that, you also have this great podcast, and you're talking to other successful agents. So
Yeah.
you're giving back to the industry, and I think that's unbelievable as well. So, tell us a little bit about why'd you decide to start the podcast?
Great question. So when I was building my real estate team, I had a business coach, and the very first steps were, and it was a business coach, not a real estate coach, because real estate coaches, not all of them, but they tend to do a lot of blocking and tackling. You need to make more calls. You need to do more of this, and here are the scripts. And I didn't want that. I wanted business help and advice. And so we started down the path of, what culture are you looking to build with your team? What's your mission? And the mission statement was from JFK: a rising tide lifts all boats.
Mhm.
And that, the spirit of that carried over into the podcast of, I really wanted to spend time with top performers and learn firsthand what they're doing. And with that, how can I do that and do what I enjoy, which is learning and talking to really amazing people, and simultaneously lift the bar for the industry? And it just kind of, it evolved, and it evolved out of my curiosity and my passions, if you will.
Yeah, it's amazing. It's not easy to start a podcast, and
It
I
is not.
do no, and I've been there, and I've continue to be there, and I know just how challenging it is. And I also know how much fun it is to talk to top producers and find out what they're doing and sort
Yeah.
of share their success with others. And I know that you've got 100 hours of of interviews under your belt, which is again an amazing accomplishment. I
Thank
don't
you.
even I never have counted the number of hours I've done, but I imagine if I would have thought when I got to 100, whenever that was, that would have been a nice thing to celebrate. So I appreciate you acknowledging that. I'm sort of the person that never quite knows how many episodes he's done or what our numbers are at, but I do love talking to top producers, and it's something that if I were an agent, or well, I technically am, but I don't practice. If I were a practicing
Yeah.
agent, then I think I would still continue to do this because it is so exciting to hear top agents, and just sort of by sheer immersion, being around people that are doing these things, the fundamentals get repeated, the sort of special techniques get
Yeah.
repeated. There isn't typically a lot, and I'm curious to get your perspective of, hey, I've got this secret sort of strategy that most people don't know. Occasionally I do hear that, and that's fun. For the
Mm,
most part, it's I just practice the fundamentals over and over and over again, and I work, diligently to make sure that I treat this thing like a business, and I structure my day, and all of the things that agents will tell us.
yeah.
And yet it seems so hard for so many agents to do that. And so I think, just being a producing agent yourself, this is probably just great reminders of every single time you talk to a top producer, like, oh yeah, this is what I'm doing as well.
I completely agree. Yeah, I think there's a great quote, and I want to say it's Socrates, and it's learning is remembering. And more often than not, we know how to be healthy. We know how to have a healthy business. We know how to do budgets and things like that. We just stop doing it. We get distracted in our days and our lives, and we don't do it, or we just it's what's one little piece of cake, and then you do that one little piece of cake more and more, and suddenly you're in a different place. And so, yeah, I think the podcast is the experience I've had. It's twofold. It's the reminder to keep doing this thing, and then I'm always looking for that one nugget. What's that one thing that I can not change in my business, but improve what we're doing by 1%.
Yeah.
And if I can improve it just 1% every day, that's a radical change at the end of the year, end of 2 years, at the end of 10 years. It's a completely different direction that you're traveling in.
Yeah, it's that metaphor of well, it's not even a metaphor. It's what pilots do, right? If they're off by even half a
Exactly.
degree, pretty soon it's not even close to where they're where you want to land. So
Exactly.
there's this self-correcting mechanism of always sort of staying on the path, which is
Yep.
doing all of those, sort of habits, for lack of a better term, these habits that we want to cultivate that ultimately continue to reinforce, us progressing down that path. And it's hard because most brokerages don't have a structure in place because, well, you're not an employee at most brokerages, so you
Correct.
are kind of left to your own devices. You can't really be, told to do a certain number of hours or a certain number of activities other than compliance. And it can be very isolating, I think, to be a realtor. It can be tricky. Many agents aren't working in offices these days, so it feels even maybe more singular and individual.
Yep.
And it's, look, we are not always able to do everything ourselves, and I think this idea of community is so important. And I love that you're creating that with your podcast. I've certainly felt that we've built some version of that here. And but I want to talk about you practicing, because moving
Yeah.
out to San Francisco, again, one of the toughest markets, if not maybe the number one or number two toughest markets to not only purchase real estate but to be a real estate agent, because of course the price points are so high. It's such an
Yeah.
attractive occupation if you can land those deals, because obviously there's a lot of revenue there. And yet it seems to me to be, gosh, I don't know how anyone gets business with so many agents. And I've talked to a lot of San Francisco agents, and obviously they figure it out. So I'd love to hear from you about how you made that transition and how you started growing that your own business.
Yeah, it's a spicy market. That's for sure. To give context, San Francisco is only 7 by 7 miles.
Yeah,
And so the footprint of San Francisco is smaller than Disney's parking lot. Mind blowing, right?
that's crazy.
And within that, there's about roughly 6,000 practicing agents. And so, to your point, the competition is fierce and the price points are high. The price points, the opening price point is luxury in most other markets
Yeah,
for a two bedroom. condo. And so it's tricky. But similar to the podcast is I figured out if you hang out with with successful people, virtue of osmosis, it rubs off. And then simultaneously, if you hang out where successful buyers and sellers are, those conversations are naturally going to come up. Um, I had a teacher in school who always would joke and say, "You don't go elephant hunting in a bar, right?
Right.
You have to go to where the elephants are."
Yeah.
Is really what it comes down to. And so I very early on I realized I took the city and I kind of broke it up and figured out what section of the city do I want to really cut my teeth in, and then twofold, what brokerage was doing the most transactions in that area, and then who were those top agents doing it. And then I hung around those agents. I would go to their open houses and just introduce myself and say hi and talk to them. And eventually I won the trust of a very prolific agent who didn't have a team. And I was given the amazing opportunity to host one of her open houses. And
Yeah.
it was on the north side of the city. It was a $2.5 million property. And I would show up 20 minutes early and I would put like six of my signs out, and I would text her when I got there early. I would bring a broom and I would sweep the street in front. I would clean up the house. I would let her know if anything was off or needed refilling, and I would just take care of it. And I would let her know that I'm taking care of it. And through that, she not only gave me a ton of those open houses, but then it parlayed into other open houses. And from doing that and being consistent in doing that, I feel like I got really lucky, but I think luck always meets hard work. And I met a guy who had to move. He was on a very tight time crunch. He had cash, and my first transaction in the city was for 2.6.
Wow.
And I was like blown away. Another couple who I met at that property, I got them into contract a couple months later for 1.8. And my business transformed literally overnight, but it didn't. It started with me choosing the right brokerage and then choosing to be around the right people, and then going and not just doing a good job at these open houses, but doing such a noteworthy job for that agent to make that agent look so good in front of
Yeah.
their client. I would send her these reports that were a page long with bullet points of what time I arrived, what time I left, what the weather was like, who were the parties who came through, who was their agent. I would hyperlink the agent's webpage and I'd put their phone number in there. I made it so darn easy for her that she couldn't say no when I said, "Hey, do you have any other open house opportunities?" And
Sure.
eventually she said, "Here's the spreadsheet of all my properties. All the dates are in there. Put your name under any ones you want to host." And that's how it just snowballed for me at just a really quick clip.
I wish all of our audience to really, really go back and listen to Sean tell that story over and over and over again, because it is the story that I have heard over and over again doing this podcast. I cannot tell you, you probably have heard it as well, is this beg, plead, and earn a top producer, or any producer really, say,
Yeah.
I want to do this. I want to do open houses, and what do I need to do to earn that trust? And like you
Yeah.
said, make it really easy for them to want you back. And boy, they're getting reports. I mean, who sends reports? Almost nobody probably. To the other listing agent, and yet, yeah, I'd see, boy, what an amazing opportunity for you. And for everyone thinking open houses don't work, they work if
They
you
were.
if you know what you're doing. And if you're, well, anyway, we know they work. So, wow, what a wonderful message for the audience. This is so smart. So, I would do that. Whatever brokerage you're at, look at the other listings from that brokerage in that area, and let's start talking to those top agents or any agent and saying, "Hey, I want to get better at open houses, and here's my plan that I want to do. Does this meet your standards, Mr. or Mrs. Broker? Is this what you're looking for in an open house? And if not, help me fill in the blanks." and let me go do this for you and prove to you that I'm going to make you look amazing to the neighborhood and the sellers. And who doesn't want to look amazing to the client, right? So
Exactly.
what a wonderful suggestion. So thank you for that. Again, it's so fundamental, and yet it is so easily ignored. And it takes courage to ask a top producer to let you show their several $1 million listing. That is not an easy ask, because of course they're like, why would I give that to you? Well, eventually, you, like Shawn said, he goes, I earned my way into that. Probably wasn't the very first time he asked. He probably, I imagine you probably had to demonstrate that you had the competency to do something like that.
Yeah, I mean, it's we've all heard, with the clients, they have to know you, like you, then trust you, and it's not dissimilar. It's the same formula for
Yeah,
agents. And I remember this agent who didn't know me from anybody else. I went to her open house. I introduced myself. I saw she was busy. I just said, "Hi, I wanted to introduce myself. I'm Shawn. Like, let me know if you ever need anything. Happy to help." Left. When I was leaving, I saw that her sign on the corner had blown over. And so I stood it back up. I took a photo and I said, "Hey, your sign on the corner blew over." I leaned it up so it wouldn't fall over again. And then that was it. But I sent it with an image, and I remember she thanked me. And
sure,
so it's the little things.
always.
And it's now they kind of know you're looking out, right? You're aware, and you're getting you get on the radar first, and then you just build from there. It's the same, I think, for agents recruiting, for agents wanting to get in front of top performers, to do open houses, to get in front of clients. It's the same formula. Treat everybody like a client,
Yeah.
follow up with them, check in with them, see how they're doing, and don't ask permission to be supportive, just be supportive. And I have found from doing that, good things come from it. And just I think simultaneously, do things without expectation. Just do good work. Just
Yeah.
do really good work out there.
Good work usually ends up winning, because there's not an abundance of good work in most industries and most professions, and even within sometimes most offices.
Yeah.
So I think this idea of elevating 1%, making a 1% is doable. We can do 1%. I can get better at my listing presentation 1%, or my open house, or my customer care calls, or whatever.
Yeah.
We can do 100%. That's hard. 1%, we can do that. And then sure enough, after after a few months, you are at 100% probably, even though technically you're just making these incremental changes. But all of a sudden, big things start shifting. So I want to chat with you, because you've talked to so many top agents, and I know you have sort of these three items of that you find, or strategies, or techniques that agents are using, really successful ones. So
Yeah.
I'd love for you to share that with our audience.
Yeah, it's interesting. It's kind of, everything is very yin and yang, push and pull. And simultaneously, if you do the right things, you tend to stop doing the wrong things, right? If you want to start eating healthier and your caloric intake is all healthy food, it leaves less room for unhealthy food, right? And if you allocate time to work out, you have then less time to sit around on the couch eating ice cream. And so a business is not dissimilar. So if you just tend to stop doing the things that don't work and do more of the things that work, you success will come from it. And so the three are more or less the what you shouldn't be doing, but baked in that is what you should be doing. And so I call them the tourist, the racehorse, and the ping pong.
Let's
And
dive in. I love it.
and I did it in this way because the way our brains work is we remember stories, and they're easier to remember. And so if you just visualize a racehorse and a ping pong and a tourist, these things will make sense. And so the tourist, years and years ago, I worked at the Kung Fu school, and I was running the schools, the Federation headquarters, and I was under a lot of stress and pressure. And I'm trying to run a business, and I would have instructors call out all the time. And so I'm running a business, and I'm teaching 16 classes a week and burning out, and I burnt out. is really what happened. And I wound up calling a friend, and we were talking, and he just sold his business and had obviously some good proceeds. And he's like, dude, we should just take a trip. And I was like, that sounds like a great idea. And so I submitted my resignation, and we booked a trip to Italy for a month. And we landed in Milan. And the best part was we had a flight in and we had a flight out, and we had 1 month, and we had zero place to be. And so we would literally get up in the morning, look at a map, and go, okay, we can go here. And if we're going to flip a coin, if it lands on heads, we'll go here. And if we flip a tails, it will go here. And we would literally flip a coin to figure out where to go. Fun fact: there's a Villa Kunkler up near Venice. I didn't get to go see it, but it's on my to do list. And so we had this meandering adventure of just literally flipping a coin of what to do every day. And so the spirit of that and how that relates to business is, if you have no plan, that is your plan. And thus the agents who don't have a plan, they tend to just wake up in the morning, flip a coin, and whatever it lands on, they tend to do. And so they don't do anything with a plan. And the agents who are succeeding on a very high level, they have a very clear plan. They know where they're going, and they know the strategies to get them there. And so my advice would be to not be the tourist, is
Yeah.
really what it summarizes down to, and have a business plan. And more importantly, I have found from working with agents who I've recruited to the team, is have a one-page business plan. If you can't get it down, distilled into one page, you are never, ever, ever going to execute on it. But more importantly, you have to revisit it. You have to sit with it every Monday and look at it and figure out, last week, did I do the tasks to move towards this plan? And it's not one of these, at the end of the years, you set it and then forget it. And then you relook at it next year and you said, well, we missed or we hit. Great job. That's not how you use it. And so having a really concise plan is what's going to carry you to success.
So don't be the tourist, but be the almost gosh, I don't know what the opposite of tourist is, but certainly somebody who knows exactly what they're doing when,
A
and
pilot.
a
Uh,
pilot.
You
Yeah,
know,
there
to
we
go back
go.
to your analogy of flying, a plane flying from New York to San Francisco is off course 90% of the
Yeah,
time. The
yeah.
pilot's goal is to keep it course corrected. That's their goal. And so within that, there's no failures. The pilot didn't fail because they need to course correct. It was an outcome, and they had an outcome they didn't want, so they changed it to have the outcome they do want. And so having the mindset of there aren't failures, there's outcomes, and stop doing the outcomes that are giving you what you don't want, and start doing more of the ones that are giving you what you do want.
Yeah. Yeah, that makes perfect sense. So yeah, I agree. It's we're talking about intentionality, right? It's the idea of, instead of being reactive, and it's so easy to be reactive, and it can feel so productive to be reactive when things
Yeah,
come at us, come into our inbox, or text and phone calls, and we can just spend all day, batting the balls back and forth that are coming at our way. And certainly we have to do that. And we also need to have a time where it's like, no, from this time to this time, I'm doing this other thing. And this other thing is
yeah,
to help me course correct, so that I'm not just batting, you know, customer service, balls all day long. I have to be prospecting. I have to be,
exactly.
nurturing my database. And so those are the things that, yeah, they're not as easy to get started, and also they're sometimes not as much fun, right? That's the other part, is that it isn't necessarily the most pleasurable tasks that are the most profitable, right? And so that's the other thing, is we think we also have to really get comfortable with the idea that discomfort is the part of, probably the name of the game, is how do we stay in discomfort, healthy discomfort, discomfort that's leading us to where we want to go. And
Well
that's
said.
it's not easy to step into that, because you have to be willing to stand in the way of a bit of misery. And misery is the path, and because through misery you get stronger. and you get better. And then all of a sudden you're out of the misery and you're reaping the rewards. But misery is the place you gotta be willing to step into. And it's not a fun lesson to hear. And I wish there was another way. I haven't found it yet. Well,
No,
okay,
but
so go ahead.
it relates to working out, right?
Yeah,
You go to the gym and then you're sore. That's discomfort. But
yeah,
you earn that discomfort. That's good
yeah,
discomfort because tomorrow when you show up, your body's healing, it's growing, it's changing, and you're stronger. And so that thing that made you discomfort or uncomfortable in the beginning no longer makes you uncomfortable. And that's our brains are actually wired like that. The more that you do something that's uncomfortable, that part of your brain actually gets stronger. And so the
absolutely.
next time you do it, it's not as uncomfortable. That's why, you see these amazing public speakers on stage and they're charismatic and charming and engaging with with everybody, or your podcast. There's no way your first podcast was as good as the one your last six,
I've
right?
eliminated it from my memory because it was so bad.
Mine too. I go back and I look at the first ones and I was like, oh my God, this was painful. But I got more and more comfortable. And I'm sure now you don't think about who's listening. You focus on the conversation and you kind of stay in the moment. But you got there by doing that uncomfortable thing so many times that it doesn't. I'm sure you don't get jitters anymore. You don't get the butterflies. You're like, all right, I know what to do. Let's go. Like, this is amazing. This is gonna be fun. And it's the same with all the aspects of our business.
I agree, and I would also add to that, to keep me honest, that, it's like you're going back to your workout metaphor. So every time I go to the gym, for example, if I have to do a wall sit, something that I'm not a fan of doing, I don't like that exercise. It's not enjoyable for me. None of the exercises are enjoyable, but that is one of the least enjoyable ones. It hurts. I have to hold it. It's this isometric exercise that I go basically almost until failure. So I'm almost like collapsing. And yet that's the path because that's how muscles get torn apart and they rebuild stronger. And
Exactly.
then to keep me honest is, yes, the next time maybe that particular amount of time is easier, but that means I have to do more to make it even harder. And I have to keep doing that to ratchet up, to keep growing. And so, back to this podcast. Yeah, I don't get jitters, but what am I working on to make this even better for
Great
my
point.
listeners? And the truth is that, yeah, I could kind of phone it in because I've done it long enough. And I'm sure there's times where I have, if I'm being perfectly honest.
Yeah.
And I don't want to do that. And I want to keep growing. So it's always this consistent, return to discomfort that, again, I wish it wasn't that way. I wish we
Yeah.
just didn't have to, but it seems to be rewarded. It's rewarded by society. It's rewarded by ourselves. It's rewarded just, by industry. So again, it's never the message I want to hear. But
Well said. I mean, and I appreciate the reframe. Is you're right. Like even if you have figured out, even if you got the wall sit for 15 seconds, now it's 16,
yeah,
and then it's 17, then it's
yeah,
18, and then eventually it's like 2 minutes, 3 minutes, and you're like, oh my God, this is crazy. You're right. You're absolutely right. You need that continuous growth, and that's where when we're growing as humans, that's when we're typically the happiest. It's
100%.
those really challenging experiences in our lives are usually that moment after was the biggest growth we've had.
Yeah, I totally agree, and I just thought came to me that I wanted to toss in, which is, while I'm doing, for example, the wall sit, and it's that higher level that I did from the previous day doing it, or the previous time. I have to be, I said this to my trainer a year or two ago. I said, "Oh, I'm never going to feel strong when I'm working out." And she goes, "That is correct. No matter how strong you actually are, you will never feel strong working out if you work out the right way." And
Yes.
so it's kind of that willingness to be like, "Oh, I'm always going to feel like there's another level to achieve."
Yeah.
And that to me is how really successful agents do it. It's not that they're down on themselves or they think they're worthless, or that I don't think is a good idea. I think shame really shuts us down. But
Yeah.
if we can say, "Hey, here's where I'm at. Here's where I want to be," and I'm always going to strive to get just a little bit, 1%, that 1% better, I think is such a good message. I'm so glad you shared that, because that's something we can jump onto. But we have to be willing to go, What's the discomfort that that
Yeah.
1% is going to entail, and I'm going to have to sit with it. But it, I'm going to have pride at the end of that. I'm
Mhm.
going to also probably have results, and it's going to just continue to further my growth. Okay, tell us about the ping pong. I'd love to hear. So we talked about tourist and being the pilot as opposed to the tourist. Tell us about ping pong.
Mhm. The ping pong is, this is a pattern that I've seen with agents who kind of started to figure it out, and I've done it myself in my career. Is the ping pong is you start doing that thing that really works for you, and then you become really successful in doing that one thing, but then you also become very busy.
Yeah.
So then you recede from doing that one thing, and then the business comes down. And then you're like, shoot, shoot, shoot. I don't have any sales. I don't have a pipeline. So then you go back to doing that one thing, or you try something new. And then that thing doesn't work. So then you try something else and that doesn't work. And then you go back to the thing that works and you're like, wow, this really works. You do that thing a ton of times. Now you're again busy and successful, and you stop doing that thing. And so your business ricochets from having abundance to scarcity and back and forth and back and forth. And that really genuinely relates to systems and processes. And no one wants to talk about it because it's not sexy, but they don't have the system and the process of consistently doing that thing to gain new contacts, and then having the system to follow up. What's the actual workflow after that? And then again, going out and doing that activity again, say the open houses, and then collecting those names. I can't even tell you how many agents are amazing. I'll use open houses as an example. They're amazing at collecting the names, and then they're like, well, the person didn't respond, so
Yeah.
they're tire kickers, or looky loos, or whatever they are. And I hate both of those phrases. And it's like, well, how many times did you follow up? Well, I sent them an email.
Yeah.
And you're like, well, how many times? Once.
Yeah.
And so it's like you need the system on the back end to do it more than once. And the reality is, marketing, statistically, we need to hear about something 7 to 9 times before we actually engage with it. So
Yeah.
the math is, the reality is, you're going to have to meet 100 people to have a 2% conversion, meaning two closes, 100 people to have two closes. And you're going to have to follow up with 100 people north of 7 times.
Yeah.
And most people don't have that system in place. And so their business tends to ping pong is sadly what happens.
And they also don't have the willingness. And again, I'm not. There before the grace of God go I. So I am not dissimilar from this, but they don't have the willingness to say, I'm not going to see the result on the third call. In fact, if I do, it's a fluke, right?
Yeah.
On the third text, the third phone call, the third email, if they somehow are like, let's start working together, I just got real lucky, because it's really going to take, it's
Right.
probably even more than 7 to 9 touches, it might be 30. But this idea of, I'm going to earn this, I'm going to
Yeah.
earn this, just like you earned your way into, to some open houses. You have to earn it, and sometimes you get lucky, and those are the ones that probably hurt people the most, because they're so,
Exactly.
yeah, they're so
The
fun.
easy win. The easy
Yeah,
win. And you're like, oh, this is easy. I only need to do it one time. But to go back to the whole gym, is how many times have you, or how many people in the world have gone into a gym one time, had an amazing workout, and they look in the mirror and like, wow, I'm fit for life.
yeah, yeah,
Never happens. You have
yeah,
to go back, but not only go back, you have to go back consistently over time. And just because you get on the scale and it's the same number, that doesn't mean that your body's not doing a recomposition,
yeah,
meaning your body fat is going down, but your muscle is going up. And so the scale is exactly the same. And so just because you don't see the difference based on what you're measuring, it doesn't mean you're not getting the results. And I think that's, you have that one easy hit. You get that, you meet that client at the open house and they write the offer on that property. Then you get lazy. You don't build the muscle. And so the muscle really is developed through the practice of the follow-up. And it's not a pass fail. Just because they didn't respond, that doesn't mean you failed. You're just practicing your follow-up. And then within the practice different follow-ups. And never open an email. This is like the bane of my existence. Never open an email with "I'm just following up." I hate that
Yeah.
because you're fishing. Instead, listen to whatever the conversation was, and then don't say "I'm following up," but follow up with a piece of information that is then valuable
Yeah.
to what they're wanting or needing. If you met them at a 3-bedroom and it wasn't a good fit for them, "Hey, can you imagine yourself living here?" "No, you know what? We really need a second bath." And you were able to collect their email? Well, then your follow-up should be, "Hey, I wanted to check in. I know this property wasn't a good fit because of X, Y, and Z, but I found this other one that's off market and it is. Did you want to hear more information about it?"
Yeah. It's great. It's this, I was thinking about you. Here's something that you might want, and letting that be the guiding star versus, hey,
Exactly.
I have to check this. This is my fourth email, so I have to just keep bugging you until eventually you break down and go, okay, let's talk. And maybe that works. I don't know. I don't suspect it works very well. I think this providing value, and going back to, you're talking about ping pong versus systems or versus habits. I might even say habits, because
Sure.
habits are like, okay, I got the the easy win, and now I got to go back and make all my dials, and I have to go continue to do my customer service, and I have to it's just consistently running the same playbook, and making
Yeah.
adjustments when necessary, of course. But just I talked to a top producer just last week, and I said, what do you, just out of curiosity, what are you doing right after this? Because I always love to hear what top producers do during the day. She goes, oh, I have to make like an hour and a half of phone calls. And I said, oh, okay, like what kind? She goes, oh, they're my prospecting calls. I do it every single day. She's been in 20 years in the business.
Love
And
it.
I said, really? And she said, "Yeah, I have to." She goes, if I don't, it's the ping pong effect. I'll be busy for a while and then I won't be. And she's like, I can't not keep my pipeline full.
Yeah.
So, and I suspect she doesn't get, a huge hit rate on those phone calls, but she knows that that's how you earn your way into somebody's business.
Again, it goes back to, out of 100 people that that's in your database, only 2% are going to convert. That's just sales statistics. Only 2%. And so 98 of those phone calls they're not they're not useless. They're future business, because not only that, each person knows 3 other people who are thinking about making a move later that year. And so that's the gold. And just, it's, and I always use this word very carefully. I used it earlier when we said, but we don't make time. Like, you can't make time. That's an impossibility, but you can allocate time to do the thing. In those top performers, they always allocate time. And I think they also live by another rule. If you have to erase it, you must replace it. You have to
Yeah.
put it somewhere else on your calendar. And that's, the calendar is another ping pong. Is the top performers, and I'm sure you've seen this with your podcast, all the top performers use a calendar. They all show up when they have to be there. I can always tell when I'm doing a podcast recording who's not a top performer, just virtue of the emails that I get. "Hey, are we still on for Friday? Hey, I don't see the link here." It's like they're missing all of the cues along the way.
Yeah. Yeah. They don't have systems. And
There it is.
I do. I had this thought, and I don't think this is our listeners. So please, I'm not talking to you, the listener, but other people that maybe aren't listening. I think there's a lot of realtors, maybe the majority of them, that don't actually keep a calendar. And I don't mean top performers. They all do, but I mean everybody else. I suspect, I think there's people in my personal life who are not realtors who don't keep a calendar. I maybe they just have amazing memories. I don't know, but I certainly don't. So I have to structure every hour of the day pretty much, and that doesn't mean I don't make adjustments. We all do, but I at least try to figure out, what am I doing today,
Yeah.
and what time, and I have to write it down because I won't remember.
Same. I cannot rely on my memory at all. And so our listing process, for example, there's 107 steps. There's 107 steps because I cannot remember, when we have 4 listings, what if that one report was ordered for this specific property. So when you have systems and processes, those 3 a.m. wake up panics, don't happen anymore because there's a place for everything and everything's in its place.
Yeah, and it's a good reminder for me to tighten up some of my systems as well, because that is a good, if you are having those Sunday scaries or whatever day of the week that is for you. It's
I
that,
love that
my gosh.
phrase.
Yeah, I didn't come up with it. It's kind of out there in the vernacular now, but it's such so perfect because I know that
Yeah.
feeling. It's probably because I haven't tightened up my process and I haven't created a repeatable system. So yeah, let's talk about racehorse. So we had tourist, we have ping pong. Don't be a ping pong. Making sure that you're consistent with your disciplined habits. And now tell us about racehorse.
Yeah, so you got to have a plan is the first thing, and then you have to have a system to execute the plan. And now the racehorse, Have you ever been to a racetrack? When I turned 30, my friends all decided to take me to the racetrack, which was super fun. We all like put on suits, and the women wore sundresses, and it was just like this,
Sure.
just such a cool event. But what's interesting is these racehorses, they have a goal, right? So they're not the tourist. They start at the start line, and their goal is the finish line. And not only that, to finish first, but the fascinating part is every horse has blinders on. And so now the jockey's goal is to keep the horse doing its job. And the blinders are now to keep the horse from getting distracted, because if the horse doesn't have them and they focused on the horse to the left, the horse on the right is going to pass. And if they're focused on the horse on the right, the horse on the left is going to pass. So they have blinders to keep from getting distracted. And so then they can only focus on that one goal. And I feel that because we have the autonomy to do whatever we want with our day, we don't put blinders on ourselves. We don't have the discipline, and we tend to just get distracted. We sit in these meetings and we hear, Joan over here is doing X, Y, and Z. And you're like, I should be doing that. And then so you introduce more ping pongs. Now you don't have one ping pong. Now you got two. And then you're like, well, Mike over here is doing this thing. So now let me bring in another ping pong. And so now we've made ourselves really busy. We don't have a system to implement these ping pongs. And then we are now chasing more and more ping pongs and getting less and less results.
Yeah.
And so it really boils down to is you got to have a plan. You got to have the systems, but then you got to stay focused. And it's the distractions that are really killing the business. And those agents who are succeeding on a high level, they have those blinders on. And even going back to agents leverage social media. How many set a timer to focus on lead generation on social media, but instead they actually just turned it into a scroll fest,
Yeah.
and then they next thing you know, 2 hours went by and they're looking at like pictures of puppies.
Yeah.
And so really having the discipline in your day to say, hey, I'm doing this thing right now and I'm not going to be distracted by it. One of the simple things that we do is with the podcast, great example, is when I launched it, I decided that we're going to have a goal of X amount of months, and the goal is to get so many subscribers or downloads, and then so we won't measure anything until that point. And within that, I need to have enough budget allocated for that project. And then I need to figure out who is going to execute what, because I don't have time to add more ping pongs. My schedule's already full. And so now I have to figure out how to get some of these things off my plate. And that's the pre-planning to a strategy. Whatever your marketing strategy is having the plan to it. Deciding things on the whim, right? Not referring to your business plan is kind of the kiss of death. It's kind of like, being a tourist in the gym. It's like if you went to the gym and said, I don't feel like doing wall sits today, but you did that over, 20, 30, 40 days, your wall sits are not going to get any better, and you're not going to develop that core strength because you didn't feel like it that day. And so again, having the blinders on, or the coach, the mentor in your back pocket to say, hey, you really need to, this was your plan. Now you need to execute on it.
Yeah, and having accountability, and I think, that's where, like you said, coach comes in, accountability partner. If you can't do a coach, you just find another agent. Look, we're all struggling. We're all struggling in different ways, and so
Exactly.
everybody's going to need accountability. Nobody does it all perfectly, and getting somebody to help keep you on task is, obviously such a great thing, and it's not a failure. I want to make sure, if you're thinking, boy, I end up doom scrolling, or I end up just infinitely scrolling, because yeah, that's what it's designed to do. It's designed to make you do that. That's not even your fault, but there's a way around it, right?
Yeah.
And that's by having some sort of accountability, where maybe you only allow yourself a certain number of minutes, and having other processes in place. But yes, the hard stuff is hard. The hard stuff is hard, and
Well said.
yeah, and I, again, wish it wasn't. Boy, that'll be my first question if there is a creator and I get to meet the creator when I pass. I'll be like, "Why'd you make all the good stuff so hard?" But he probably, or he or she will probably say, "Well, yeah, was what's supposed to be." Um, and it just is. That's kind of just reality. So, look, we also, I think, just have to be really careful about technology just capturing our attention, when it's designed to, especially social media, is designed to capture our attention, because that's how it monetizes. So of course
Exactly.
it wants you infinitely scrolling. Like, that's the best possible thing you can do for that service. And it's tricky, because you probably have to post on social media. It's kind of like the person with the eating disorder trying to learn how to, eat in a non-disorderly way. That's not easy, because
Right.
you have to eat. So I get that the social media thing is really tricky, but if you keep falling into that hole, that's where you need to say, I keep falling into this hole. I just have to
Yeah.
find a solution. And whether it's you put a timer on your phone that locks you out, or you get somebody to, just check in with, okay, for the next half an hour, I'm going to post, I'm going to connect with my audience. I'm going to write comments on there, instead of
Yeah.
consuming, I'm going to be proactive and do something, create content, whatever. And in 30 minutes, I'm going to call you and I'm going to tell you how many of these I did, or whatever the system is.
Yeah.
Don't feel ashamed. My girlfriend struggles with infinitely scrolling, and she's a super successful executive. So it's not, and she's one of the most disciplined people I know, and she can't hardly do it. So
And that's how it's designed. I mean, it's
yeah, it's
designed
totally,
to be
yeah,
addictive. And I think you make a really great point, DJ, is to recognize, to just be very honest with yourself. And it's hard to say, I do scroll too much and I do have a problem with that. Like, at least whatever it is in your business, just acknowledge it. And then what I would recommend is find a solution. Is maybe log out every time you are done, or delete the app. So you have to re-upload the app before, and
yeah,
then you have to log back in to go do the activity. Make it a little bit harder. A really subtle trick for those watching this podcast is, my phone is black and white, because the colors make it more attractive to our
ah,
dopamine receptors. So if your phone is black and white, it loses the red numbers that jump up on all the
yeah,
apps. It doesn't have the same appeal to our brain, and
smart,
so the satisfying part of it goes away. And so there's tons of little tricks. You can get a product like Loomly, for example, and you go to that platform and you put all of your social posts in there, and then you schedule them to go out. So you don't even have to actually physically go to that app.
yeah,
And then as a treat, this is where, the Pavlovian philosophy or strategy comes into play. Is, listen, I'm going to sit down for 30 minutes and make past client calls. I'm just going to say, hey, I was thinking about you and wanted to say hi. At
yeah,
the end of 30 minutes, reward yourself, set a timer for 10 minutes, and doom scroll.
yeah,
Create it as, pain and pleasure. Create a reward for doing the thing. Or, let's go back to working out. It was I use that because it's easy for me, because I did it for the bulk of my life.
yeah,
But if you're eating very disciplined for 7 days a week, months on end, you get really it gets really challenging. But
sure,
if you have a cheat day,
yeah.
like
Or even
Sunday,
just a cheat meal.
just a cheat meal.
If a cheat day, if you fall off the, you fall completely on a cheat day, and it just really hurts you the next, then make it a cheat meal or two cheat meals or whatever. Yeah.
Exactly. And but you then give yourself the reward, or like, hey, like I've been eating really disciplined all week. My friend's birthday is this weekend. I'm gonna have French fries and beer. That just sounds amazing. And now it's a reward for the hard work. And so it's just creating these, it's stepping back and looking like what area do I want to improve? How can I improve it? And then how do you change it? Or maybe you don't like making phone calls. Maybe that's not your thing, but maybe you have a really nice hot tub and you have a cell phone. So, you know what? I'm going to go put on some cool music. I'm going to go hop in the hot tub. I'm going to fire it up. It's a cheat day. I'm going to pour a glass of wine. And you know what? Then I'm going to make my calls.
Yeah.
What a great experience. Like,
Absolutely.
what are you doing? You know what? I was relaxing in my hot tub and I was just thinking about my past year and I was thinking about how I helped you buy that home or sell it. And I just wanted to say hi and how grateful I am for the
Yes.
opportunity to work with you.
Yes.
And it's like you've changed the whole landscape of what that looks like. I have a home gym. And one of the ways I keep myself engaged is every once in a while, I'll be like, oh, I really, really have to have this new piece of equipment. Okay, what's my goal? All right, I'm going to structure some sort of silly little goal for myself. And when I reach that goal, I'm going to get that product. I'm going to get that thing. And now I have like this new fun thing to play with. And so I think not making the word discipline a dirty thing, but make it like this happy, engaging thing that has associated rewards with it.
Yeah, I love that. Change the environment of where you're performing the unpleasant act and try to make it as pleasant as possible. It's certainly, it's hard to feel depressed if you throw your shoulders back and you look up and even
Yeah.
easier, it's hard to be depressed. Well, that's pretty easy, but it's hard to be depressed if you're feeling grateful about something. And so you go, well, I'm feeling depressed. I'm not grateful. Okay, well, if you were grateful about something, what might that be? You certainly have something in your life to be grateful about. Okay, that. Okay, now come up with another thing and another thing and another thing. Now
Yeah,
go do
it's
the task. Yeah, now go
it,
do the task that's really hard.
exactly. And
Yeah.
sometimes start simple.
Mhm.
Like, hey, I'm grateful because I'm on this side of the dirt.
Yeah.
Like, let's start there. I'm grateful that I can take a deep breath. And
Yeah.
then you just you build on, I'm thankful that I have a beautiful, safe home environment. I'm thankful that I have food in my refrigerator. It's just start really simple and then build from there. And again, like I think if you add some body movement and some music, it's it's really easy for us to downward spiral. You
Sure.
have a deal blowing up, you have clients pulling out, you have like a lot of bad stuff, but you can go back and recalibrate yourself. Our brains can't you cannot focus on being depressed and immensely grateful at the same time. It can't, like, the wiring
They're
doesn't.
different parts of the brain. Yeah.
It's a totally different part of the brain. And just go back to what, like, I'm grateful for this opportunity. It's a learning opportunity and it's a challenge, but I'm grateful that I'm having this moment right now because I'm going to learn something. What can I learn? And then you're reframing your perspective on that event, which sometimes it's really hard.
Perfectly said. Well, Realtor 180 is the podcast. I want everybody to go check out and subscribe. We'll have a link in the show notes. Also, Shawn_Kunkler, Kunkler. He is with Compass in San Francisco, the Bay Area. And guess what? His company, Homeward Associates, is his brand. And we will have a link to his website as well in the show notes because you should want to connect with him because guess what? Not everyone lives in San Francisco forever, right? It's a very expensive place to live. And a lot of times people go, I want to go somewhere else and get a little bit more for my money, or they maybe leave an industry and go somewhere different. So guess what? He's got people that leave and need help in other parts of the country. And you may have people that are transferring in and out of San Francisco as well. And you might not practice there. So let's reach out to Shawn. Let's make some connections, see if you can, work out some fun referral stuff. Let him know, what you expect from him if he's going to pass an agent over to you. Because guess what? He will tell you and he will probably want the same. And I love that. Shawn has, he's obviously right on top of things. He's got his systems, his processes. He knows what to do. And he is constantly talking to top producers. So he's constantly hearing what to do as well. So even if he's having a tough day on his podcast, he's hearing from people that know how to get through those tough days. And he's at a great company as well. So let's all support Shawn. He's a great guy. He's so we're so thankful on behalf of the audience, Shawn, for you're spending an hour with us. That's really, I know, not easy for a top producer like you. So thank you on behalf of the audience. On behalf of Shawn and myself, thank you to the audience. You guys are the reason we do this show, and
Yeah.
we want to keep doing these episodes. So please continue listening. If you found us of value, please like and subscribe to the podcast. And also, too, if you have another agent in your market or in your office that could use some of this knowledge and really, what did we hear today? We heard a lot about intentionality. Let's intentionally structure our business. And it's a great reminder to do those things. Send this podcast off as a link. Let them know about it. We're here to serve you and the broker community as a whole. As Shawn said, rising tide raises all ships. So let's help all the other agents that are struggling, because right now it's tough out there. And so let's make it a little bit less tough. Shawn, thank you again. We will, and thank you to our sponsors, of course, as well. We love you. And Realtor 180, again, go subscribe. We will get everyone, see everyone, and hear, listen, or I guess you'll hear us on the next episode or see us. Shawn, thank you again.
Thank you. Appreciate it.